The wonder of connections, because it's the wonderful Wednesday wonder. And it's amazing that it's Wednesday already. Time is slipping past, isn't it? And our connection to time is very varied at the moment, I would say. There are so many different ways that we can use the word connection. To connect, verb. Connected. Yeah, it's what are you connected to? Are you connected to stress? Are you connected to joy? Are you connected to another person? Is that where we're having issues? Because our connections to others is being stretched beyond its reasonable elasticity. We have nerve endings, and we use the sense of touch as a way to connect physically to others of our kind and others like pets. It's also something that we use as an indication of what something is, particularly if one of our other senses, our sight, is impaired. Our fingers, and my husband often says to me, stop looking with your fingers, use your eyes. Coming from my previous profession as a vet nurse, a lot of the time, because an animal can't tell you what's wrong, you have to feel your way around to feel where the pain points are. You have to feel your way around to feel where the lumps and the bumps are. And they'll let you know. Very quickly they'll let you know. However, there's another kind of connection that goes on with that. Because many times we can find that we allow our connection, this wave of energy, our auric field, if you like, that comes out much farther than you think it does. But when you're connected to understanding that, we can also use it to allow the auric fields of other things understand that we don't mean them any harm, that we're trying to help. Now also this has been shown in videos and memes that you've seen on Facebook and Instagram and other platforms, where you've seen animals in the ocean actually seek out human beings to help them. I'm not sure they understand that it's usually the human beings who put them in the position in the first place, but they seem to understand and recognise, and this is something that is true of your ordinary dog and cat as well. They can recognise when a human being is a kind human being. There are some that are beyond abused psychologically, who fear to have a connection with humans because of the human interaction they've had already, or lack thereof. I have seen some dogs who have been physically dissociated from any form of touch, any form of connection, other than having food thrown at them every so often. Shy away from any human contact and any other contact, even of another dog. Is this the kind of situation that we are concerned about as far as what's going on at the moment in losing our connection? The physical one. When we think about it, we've actually been chipping away at that connection for quite a while. Physically, when we are engaged in our phones, to the extent where perhaps someone will text someone else in the same house to to let them know to come and pick up their dinner, and whether they eat it with them or not is not really an issue. What does that say about our value of connection? Our valuing of connection? What does that say? What does it mean to us, really, if we allow it to happen in the immediate space? And we have been doing for decades now. And the erosion is so slow, we don't notice. But now we're noticing. Now we're understanding what we are losing. And it's not too late to change that. Because actually the connection that we have now at the moment, vocal and visual, means something, because we can go beyond the physical. And this is what the wonder of connection is all about. It's going beyond the physical. When we reach out, and I know that many of you will think, oh, this is just crazy talk. But think again. Have you never experienced that the phone is rung and you've known already who's on the other side? Not even to the point where you pick up the phone and say their name. Sometimes that happens. Or you phone someone and they say, oh, I knew you would phone because you always do when this is happening. I get that a lot. I do get that a lot. But then I tune in. I keep my connections, not physically, perhaps as much as I could do, but in the dream time, in the trance time that I take, so that when someone comes into my sphere of friendship, relationships, no matter where they are in the world, something tells me when there's something going on that I need to maybe connect with them physically. And that's not something that is unique to me. The way that it happens perhaps is unique to me. The wiring of it may be unique to me. But it's not unique to the human race. It's not unique particularly to mothers with children. It's not unique to twins. It is actually more common than we think about. And it's not preconception, it's perception. It's perceiving those invisible waves of information, the ripple effect in the universal pond, the collective consciousness, the morphogenic field, whatever you want to call it, it happens. And you can hone that. You can actually learn how to make that happen for yourself. And that's another wonder that we forgot to remember we could do that. This is how mindfulness works as well, because you're connecting not outwardly but inwardly. You're reconnecting to, I mentioned yesterday, the higher self. We sometimes call it the sovereign self. Basically, in Hawaiian, it's the oversoul. Higher consciousness. That's your meerkat who's looking out on the horizon and can see so much farther than you can at the moment. Because your eyes are not their eyes yet, but they can be. It's like when you feel there's something going on, you're not quite sure what it is, and then you tuck it away and dismiss it. It's like, oh, well, I can't figure out what's going on, so what's the point in worrying about it? Then maybe a few days later, it could be months later, something happens and you remember that you had that feeling. Bit uneasy by that. How did that work? Then everyday life intrusions start to come in again. However, we can connect to the other end of the stick of that and actually start to go down the worry rabbit hole. And that's a warren full of worry. So monitor your connections, the way that you're connecting and to what you're connecting. When we connect with the negative thoughts, we can end up in a cul-de-sac that's really not good. And that usually occurs with the 2-word question at the beginning, what if? Now, I love a what if question. I really do, because I'm on the other side of the what if. I'm on the what if it happens well, if it happens wonderfully. What if this is just the beginning of a whole new way of perceiving life, a whole new way of dealing with things? What if we're given a chance now, being given a chance to actually take pause and take note of the effect that we're having individually, and therefore when we start doing it individually and each one of us does the same things, what we're doing collectively and the effect we're having collectively. When we connect to that energy, then we can actually say, what can I do differently? What if I just did one thing slightly differently to what I would normally do? Maybe I choose to buy something that's got recycled plastic on it instead of one-time use only. What if I gave the shop back their plastic bags after they'd taken the barcode off it, in the case of like cauliflowers, and just said, here, you can have that. That's your responsibility. I don't want it. Because there was a time, of course, when we didn't have barcodes for food. We just had the food and maybe a brown paper bag if we were lucky. Or, if you were like my mother, who would carry a bag within a bag within a bag within a bag, and she would go about with all these bags wrapped in one bag, and then magically in the shop would take a bag out, and the grocer would take from the scales and put the food straight in her bag. No wrapping, no plastic, no polystyrene. But we got used to the wrapping, we got used to the polystyrene because it was cleaner, supposedly. Not very clean now, is it? So connecting to that energy and that way of not thinking, of unmindfulness, maybe we could change that one thing. And I wonder what would happen then. Because one change usually begets another. And in the case of connection, one connection usually begets another. It's the premise of networking in business. You go to a networking situation and you're standing there and you're telling them, basically in 60 seconds or less sometimes, who you are and what you do. Or what you do and who you are, depending on how you like to couch it. But actually what they all want to know is what you can do for them. And that comes into the being of, once you've gone up there and you've put your energy out to say, I'm here, this is what I do. Then it depends on who wants to connect with you. And you want to connect with whomever you've been listening to that's been interesting. And that's the thing. We have this connective ability, but it has to take the form of some kind of resonant attraction. There has to be a kind of ping going on. Ooh, that sounds good. I'd like to know more about that. What if you sharpened that one up? What if you said to your sovereign self, your universal mind, your oversoul, what if you said, I would like to know and be made aware of more things that I can connect to that are really good for me now, that will enhance my ability to deal with stressful situations, perhaps, that will enhance my spiritual connection, that will allow me to balance myself more. I'm wondering on this Wednesday Wonder, what would happen if you did that? Because it's another way of setting the tone in a more broad spectrum manner, perhaps. But what if you tried it? What if you said out loud, hey, universal mind, thank you for doing what you do for me. I wonder if we could make it that you make me aware and put things in my path that I will look at and see and do something about, that will be interesting and will allow me to make connections with my spirituality, my ways of dealing with stress, my understanding of my intake of food. And that's a good one too. I did a program recently, Love Your Body, Lose the Weight, with Jane Talbot. It was great. And she's actually running it again, so there's a link on my pages somewhere. It's about the connection to you and food. You can change that connection. You can make that connection better and more understandable as to what it is that you look for when you're looking for a food-based sedative for the stresses and strains of everyday life, or indeed the boredom. What if you changed that one thing? What if you took that and ran with it? Because you know you can. Now I'm going to ask you the other question. Do you really want to? A lot of the times, the connection that we feel we want to make is actually being scuppered by the opponent inside that says, that's going to be a lot of work, you know. That means that you're never going to be able to do this, that or the other, or eat that or the other, again, ever. Which actually is not necessarily true. Your opponent will lie to you. For a warped sense of trying to be right, of trying to keep you in a space in your bath of custard, your familiarity zone. So what if you made a difference to the connection between you and your opponent, your inner self-speak, your inner no-no person, and said, hang on a minute, all you're trying to do is keep me in a space where I'm stuck. What if I moved out of that space? What if I made enough connections, well enough, strong enough, and all it takes is the will to start? All it takes is the question. Universal mind, sovereign self, oversoul, can you help me? I want to make a connection. Let me know how it goes. And we'll talk about it again some other time. Be well, be blessed, be loved. Make the connections.